Let me quickly turn the mic to Abu Siddiq, who will start this meeting with his usual wisdom. Thank you, Abu Siddiq. Please take it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, Mr. Chairman, Co-Chair, distinguished delegates, colleagues. Allow me, Chairman, to begin by offering our sincere condolences on behalf of your good self and all other colleagues, to our friends, brothers and sisters from Iraq, on the tragic loss of life following a fire in a hospital in the neighborhood of Ibn al-Khatib in Baghdad this weekend on Saturday. Most of the victims, we understand, were COVID-19 patients or their relatives, and it is difficult to find words, Chairman, to express our grief on this heartbreaking incident. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims, all the bereaved, and the good people of Iraq. I would request, Mr. Chairman, that we observe a minute silence in memory of the deceased.
Of course, Excellency, we second you. Our condolences to our dear brothers in Iraq and to the loss of human life everywhere and anywhere and anytime. And we join you, of course, in observing a minute of silence.
May their souls rest in eternal peace. Chairman, despite these tragic circumstances, I would like to wish all of us a holy and peaceful Ramadan. I pray this sacred month brings you and your families harmony, happiness, and contentment. May Allah cleanse us of our burdens and worries and strengthen our souls. In the hadith of Ibn Abbas, he said, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, was the most generous of people, and he was even more generous in Ramadan when Angel Gabriel would meet him. He would meet him every night of Ramadan to study the Quran. Thus, the Prophet would be more generous than a nourishing wind, according to Ibn Abbas. In this holy month, we are called, Chairman, to celebrate the enduring bonds of community, friendship, and collegiality that unite all of us. We renew our commitment to group cohesiveness and solidarity with one another. Reflection and introspection are hallmarks of this holy month, which is particularly apt when we consider how far we have traveled since last year's Ramadan, which I recall began on the 23rd of April. At that time, our heads were still spinning from the infamous Black Monday of the 20th of April 2020, when WTI futures price dropped to a negative $37.63 a barrel. They dropped by an eye-watering $55, in fact, to be precise, $55.90 in one single day, led to a negative price for the first time in oil history. Oil demand plunged by 22% during that month. An extreme sense of gloom pervaded the industry. We have traveled far since those depths. 12 months later, there are a multitude of positive signals regarding the global economy and prospects for our industry. However, significant uncertainties remain. Again, cautious optimism continues as our mantra. Regarding the global economic outlook, it took a while for the clouds of despair that was so apparent in April 2020 to dissipate. In October, the IMF was still warning that COVID-19 pandemic will result in lasting damage to living standards across the world, and any recovery was expected to be long, uneven, and uncertain. 6 months later, Mr. Chairman, at its spring meeting, the IMF had become much more upbeat. Most advanced economies will only bear moderate long-term scars from COVID-19, and the American economy is forecast to be stronger in 2024 than it was prior to the pandemic. The consensus view among most economists and forecasting agencies is that with the right policies in place, the world can mitigate the worst impacts of this dreadful virus. The checks for the 1,400 per individual, US dollars per individual, under the US stimulus package are beginning to have an impact, with retail sales up 10% in the US in March. US unemployment fell to 6%, the lowest level since the pandemic struck. The change in sentiment in the US banking sector is indicative of this reversal of fortunes for the US economy. A year ago, the major banks in America were anticipating economic catastrophe, setting aside billions to accommodate for mammoth losses as small businesses were pummeled and office space emptied. But just on Wednesday, 14th of April, executives at Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo delivered bullish forecasts. However, the recovery's transition from Wall Street to Main Street will not be straightforward. The pandemic has led to consumers stockpiling an extra 5.4 trillion US dollars in savings, and consumer confidence is beginning to rally. For the first quarter of this year, the Conference Board Global Consumer Confidence Index hit the highest level since its records began 16 years ago. According to the credit rating agency Moody's, if consumers were to spend just a third of these excess savings, global output could be boosted by 2 percentage points. At 18.3%, China's first quarter economic growth in 2021 has simply been staggering. The contrast with the 6.8% contraction in the first quarter of 2020 reflects a remarkable post-pandemic surge. Big infrastructure projects are fueling this growth. This has generated positive momentum with regard to oil demand. Mr. Chairman, in our most recent monthly oil market report, world oil demand growth in 2021 is expected to increase by about 6 million barrels a day year on year, representing an upward revision of about 0.1 million barrels a day from last month's report. We also received very good news regarding the inventory glut that amassed during the pandemic. Commercial oil inventories in the OECD stood just 77 million barrels above their 2015-2019 average as of March, down from a peak of 249 million in July. This is a remarkable turnaround from that fateful Monday last April when the world was fretting about running out of storage. The revival of fortunes for the health of the economy and our industry is due in no small part to the efforts of the Declaration of Cooperation Partners. What has been particularly apparent about this group over the last year is how responsive we have been to the fast-changing environment. For all involved in this great enterprise, it has been extremely reassuring to know that the decision-making process has been informed by the quality analysis and data provided by this esteemed committee supported by the Secretariat. Despite the positive developments, Mr. Chairman, we are all acutely aware that we are far from putting this pandemic behind us. One of the saddest pieces of news over the last month was the fact that the world crossed another gut-wrenching milestone. The global death count from COVID-19 exceeded 3 million people. 3 million souls have perished. This is a heartbreaking reminder, Mr. Chairman, lest we needed it, that this pandemic is first and foremost a human tragedy of an unimaginable scale. The pace it took to reach this number is extremely concerning. Mr. Chairman, it took 9 months for the world to see 1 million fatalities. Another 4 months for a second million to succumb. And just 3 months for the 3 million milestone to be reached. New regions are emerging or reimagined as hotspots, with 8 consecutive weekly rises in the total number of new COVID cases globally. The deteriorating situation is particularly grim in India. In just 3 days, Mr. Chairman, India recorded over 1 million new infections. Just 3 days. For 4 successive days, the country saw record numbers of daily numbers of COVID-19 infections exceeding 300,000 new cases per day. The health system has been overwhelmed due to a variant of interest, a double mutation known as B1167. It seems a matter of time before this mutation is classified as a variant of concern. Additionally, the P1 variant in Brazil has pushed cases to record numbers in recent weeks, and the country's daily average death toll is among the highest in the world. While we can take comfort from the fact that over 1 billion vaccinations have been administered worldwide, we saw several reminders this month that reaching herd immunity will not be without setbacks. Furthermore, this month showed the continuing gap emerging between developed and developing countries, as well as rich and poor within societies, with regard to the pace of their vaccination rollouts. Again, this is critical, as we will not be truly safe from COVID-19 until everyone is safe. Mr. Chairman, the Managing Director of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, likes to quote the great Russian writer, Leo Tolstoy, when describing the current economic situation. And Tolstoy said, all the variety of life is made up of light and shadow, unquote. This is an extremely apt description of the grounds for cautious optimism while recognizing the uncertainties when we assess the current situation in the oil market. Distinguished members of the committee may have also noticed I am partial to the occasional quotation myself, and Tolstoy said he provides this wise guidance on the best way forward. And I quote, he said, the 2 most important warriors are patience and time, unquote. Let us patiently continue our work of carefully monitoring the market, providing insightful analysis for the Conference of Ministers, and in this way, we can continue on the positive trajectory we have experienced so far. Mr. Chairman, before I conclude, I would like, on your good behalf, and your co-chair and all colleagues, thank our friends and colleagues from Venezuela, Comrade Gonzalez, Comrade Ronnie Romero, for waking up at this unholy hour to observe Ramadan with us today in solidarity with this important committee. We thank you both, comrades. Shukran jazilan, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, indeed, we thank them for observing the JTC, not not Ramadan. Okay, well, thank you very much. Nice change of quotations from Jalaluddin ibn Rumi now to Tolstoy, I can see. So let's hope we have more light and less shadow and darkness.